Penelope Adams never anticipated that the cool spring morning of 1885 would mark the day her life in Copper Creek, Colorado would shatter beyond recognition. Her trembling fingers clutched the worn leather-bound journal to her chest, its pages containing the truth that had set everything ablaze. "You have brought nothing but shame to this family." Her father's voice thundered through the modest two-story home where she had lived all her 22 years. His face had turned a dangerous shade of crimson, veins bulging at his temples as he pointed toward the door. Behind him, her mother wept silently, refusing to meet Penelope's pleading gaze. "Father, please," Penelope begged, her voice barely a whisper. "Everything I wrote was true. The townspeople deserve to know what's happening at the mine." Thomas Adams slammed his fist against the wall, rattling the family portraits. "You printed lies about the most powerful man in this county. Accusations of corruption and mistreatment of workers? Do you realize what you've done?" Penelope stood her ground despite her quivering limbs. After months of gathering testimonies from the miners about unsafe conditions and withheld wages, she had submitted an anonymous article to the Copper Creek Chronicle. She never expected the editor would print her full name beneath the headline. "They weren't lies," she insisted. "Mr. Richardson is working those men to death while pocketing the money that should improve safety. 3 men died last month alone." Her father's expression hardened. "Richardson provides for half the families in this town, including ours. Your foolish idealism has cost me my position as foreman. We'll be lucky if we don't lose this house." "Thomas," her mother finally spoke, voice raw with emotion. "Perhaps we could—" "No." He cut her off. "I won't have it. She's made her choice." He turned back to Penelope, eyes cold. "You have until sundown to pack your things and leave. You're no longer welcome under this roof." The words struck like physical blows. "Mother!" Penelope turned desperately to the woman who had taught her to stand for what was right. But her mother only turned away, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Her younger sisters peered from the staircase, eyes wide with fear and confusion. "Where am I supposed to go?" Penelope asked, hating the crack in her voice. Her father's expression showed no remorse. "You should have considered that before you decided to play crusader. Perhaps one of those miners you're so concerned about will take pity on you." 6 hours later, Penelope stood on the dusty main street of Copper Creek with nothing but a small trunk containing her clothes, her journal, and the few personal possessions she could carry. The weight of betrayal sat heavier on her shoulders than the trunk she struggled to drag toward the boarding house. The setting sun cast long shadows across the street as townsfolk hurried past, averting their eyes. News traveled fast in small towns, and everyone knew that Penelope Adams had been cast out for crossing Jeremiah Richardson. No one dared offer help. "Mrs. Holloway, please," Penelope pleaded at the boarding house door. "I can work for my keep. I'll clean rooms, help in the kitchen, anything." The older woman's face was etched with sympathy, but her voice remained firm. "I'm sorry, dear. Mr. Richardson owns this building. I can't risk taking you in." Door after door closed in her face as darkness fell. Even the church, which preached Christian charity every Sunday, turned her away with mumbled excuses about propriety and reputation. Night had fully descended when Penelope finally collapsed on a bench outside the general store, her chest tight with hopelessness. The spring air carried a biting chill that cut through her thin coat. The reality of her situation pressed down upon her, homeless, friendless, and utterly alone in a town that had collectively turned its back. "You look like you could use some help, miss." The deep voice startled her. Penelope looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the dim light spilling from the saloon across the street. As he stepped closer, the lamplight revealed a man perhaps a few years older than herself, with sun-bronzed skin and eyes that reminded her of the sky just before a storm. "I don't need charity," she replied automatically, pride still intact despite everything. A slight smile touched his lips. "Didn't offer any. Just observation." He gestured to the trunk and her hunched posture. "You're the Adams girl. The one who wrote about the mine conditions." Penelope stiffened. "If you've come to tell me I got what I deserved, please save your breath. I've heard enough of that today." Instead of retreating, he sat down beside her, maintaining a respectful distance. "Actually, I was going to say it was about time someone had the courage to speak the truth." Her head snapped up, studying him more carefully. He was dressed simply but neatly in the practical attire of a working man's sturdy pants, a worn but clean shirt, and a leather vest. A weathered Stetson rested on his knee. He didn't have the look of a miner, nor the polished appearance of a businessman. "Xavier Caldwell," he offered, extending a calloused hand. "Most folks just call me Zav. I run a small ranch about 5 miles outside town." Penelope hesitated before shaking his hand briefly. "Penelope Adams. Though I suppose you already knew that. Your article made quite an impression." He leaned back, studying the near-empty street. "Not many would risk everything to stand up for what's right." "I didn't intend to risk everything," she admitted softly. "I just couldn't stay silent anymore." Xavier nodded slowly. "Sometimes doing the right thing comes at a price." He glanced at her trunk. "I'm guessing you need a place to stay?" Alarm bells rang in her mind. A young woman did not accept accommodation offers from strange men, no matter how desperate her circumstances. As if reading her thoughts, he quickly added, "My sister runs a small trading post near my ranch. She has a spare room and could use the help. It's not much, but it's honest work and a roof over your head until you figure out your next move." Penelope weighed her options, which were painfully few. "Why would you help me? You don't even know me." Xavier stood, settling his hat on his head. "My pa was killed in a mine collapse 5 years ago. Safety violations, they said. Nothing changed." His eyes met hers directly. When someone finally has the courage to call out the truth, seems only right to offer a hand. Something in his steady gaze convinced her he was sincere. Still, caution prevailed. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't just ride off with a stranger." "Fair enough." He nodded toward the sheriff's office. "Sheriff Dawson knows me well. Been supplying his office with beef for years. Talk to him if you like. I'll wait." An hour later, after confirming Xavier Caldwell's reputation with both Sheriff Dawson and the telegraph operator who had known him since childhood, Penelope found herself perched in his wagon as they traveled the moonlit road away from the only home she had ever known. "My family might never speak to me again," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Xavier kept his eyes on the road ahead. Sometimes the family we choose matters more than the one we're born to. As the lights of Copper Creek faded behind them, Penelope felt equal measures of heartbreak and strange, unexpected hope. Dawn was breaking when they reached the small trading post that served as a supply stop for outlying ranches. The modest wooden structure sat at a crossroads, with a small cabin attached to its rear. "Martha," Xavier called as he helped Penelope down from the wagon. "Got someone for you to meet." A woman emerged from the cabin, wiping her hands on an apron. She shared Xavier's storm blue eyes, but her hair was a shade lighter than his deep brown. Her expression was one of curious surprise as she took in Penelope's presence. "This is Penelope Adams," Xavier explained. "The one who wrote that piece about the mine." Martha's eyes widened with recognition. "Well, I'll be. That took real grit, Miss Adams." She extended her hand. "Martha Caldwell. Welcome to the most humble trading post in Colorado." The siblings' easy acceptance nearly undid Penelope's carefully maintained composure. After a day of closed doors and turned backs, their simple kindness felt overwhelming. "Thank you," she managed. "Your brother mentioned you might have work and a room to spare." Martha shot her brother a look. "Did he now? Well, he's not wrong. Could use an extra pair of hands around here, especially with someone who can cipher and keep books proper." She gestured toward the small cabin. "Room's nothing fancy, but it's clean and yours if you want it." Within the hour, Penelope was settled in a small but tidy room with a narrow bed, a chest of drawers, and a small window overlooking a patch of wild prairie flowers. Martha had provided fresh linens and a basin of water, leaving her to rest after the long night. Instead of sleeping, Penelope sat on the edge of the bed and opened her journal, recording the events of the past 24 hours with a shaking hand. As she wrote, tears finally came for her father's harsh rejection, her mother's silent compliance, and the home she feared she'd never see again. She had done what was right. Why, then, did it feel like she'd lost everything? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Miss Adams." Xavier's voice came through the door. "Martha's got breakfast ready if you're feeling up to it." Wiping her tears, Penelope composed herself and joined the Caldwells at their small kitchen table. The simple fare of biscuits, eggs, and coffee was the most welcoming meal she'd ever encountered. "You can start helping in the store tomorrow," Martha said. Today, just rest and get your bearings. I don't want to be a burden, Penelope insisted. Xavier shook his head. Nobody who works earns that title. Later that afternoon, Xavier prepared to return to his ranch. I'll be back in a few days to check in, he told Penelope as he climbed onto his wagon. Martha will take good care of you until then. Why are you being so kind? Penelope couldn't help but ask. His expression turned thoughtful. Same reason you wrote that article, I imagine. Because it's the right thing to do. As his wagon disappeared down the dusty road, Penelope realized she had found an unexpected ally in this rugged cowboy. Whether he would remain one remained to be seen. The days that followed established a new rhythm to Penelope's life. She rose early to help Martha open the trading post, learned the inventory system, and assisted customers, mostly ranch hands and families from outlying homesteads. Many recognized her name and whispered among themselves, but none showed the open hostility she'd faced in town. On the fourth day, a familiar wagon approached. Penelope's heart quickened unexpectedly at the sight of Xavier's tall figure climbing down. Store looks busy, he observed, nodding toward the two customers examining fabric bolts. Your sister's been teaching me the ropes, Penelope replied, though I think she's still checking my figures when I'm not looking. His laugh was warm, genuine. Martha checks everyone's figures, even her own. He reached into his wagon and pulled out a small wrapped package. Brought you something. Surprised, Penelope accepted the parcel and carefully unwrapped it to reveal a small wooden box with intricate carvings of wildflowers across its surface. It's beautiful, she whispered, tracing the delicate design. Made it myself, Xavier admitted, looking almost bashful. Thought you might need somewhere to keep your writing things. The thoughtfulness of the gesture touched her deeply. You carve? He shrugged. Winters get long. Hands need something to do. He glanced toward the store's entrance. Heard any news from town? Penelope's moment of happiness faded. No word from my family either. Give it time, he suggested gently. Truth has a way of finding daylight eventually. Over the next few weeks, Xavier's visits became more frequent. He often arrived with small gifts, a book of poetry he thought she might enjoy, wildflowers from a meadow near his ranch, fresh honey from his hives. Each offering seemed carefully chosen to bring her comfort. Penelope found herself looking forward to his visits, watching the road for signs of his wagon. She tried to convince herself it was merely gratitude for his kindness, but the warmth that spread through her whenever he appeared suggested something deeper. Martha noticed, of course. My brother's taken quite a shine to you, she commented one evening as they closed the store. Penelope busied herself with organizing receipts. He's been kind to both of us. Martha's knowing smile spoke volumes. 30 years I've known that boy, and I've never seen him carve a box for anyone but family. The observation settled in Penelope's heart, a small spark of possibility she hardly dared acknowledge. On a particularly warm day in June, Xavier arrived not with his usual wagon, but riding horseback, leading a second mount behind him. Thought you might like to see more of the country, he suggested. If you can spare her for the afternoon, he added to Martha. His sister waved them off with a smile. Store's quiet. Go on before I change my mind. The ride began awkwardly, as Penelope hadn't been on horseback in years. Xavier was patient, showing her how to grip with her knees and move with the animal's rhythm. Soon they were traveling side by side across rolling grassland dotted with wildflowers. It's beautiful out here, Penelope breathed, taking in the expansive blue sky and distant mountains. Xavier nodded. Different kind of beauty than town offers. Wilder, more honest. He led her to a small creek where cottonwood trees provided welcome shade. They dismounted and sat on sun-warmed rocks while the horses drank. Do you miss it? Xavier asked after a comfortable silence. Town life. Penelope considered the question. I miss my family, she admitted. But not the pretense. Everyone knowing about the problems at the mine, but pretending they didn't exist. She trailed her fingers through the clear water. Out here, things are what they are. That's what drew my father west, Xavier said. He was a Boston businessman before the war. Came back changed, couldn't stand the falseness of society anymore. Headed west with my mother, looking for something real. Is that what you found? Something real. His eyes met hers. Still looking for parts of it. The air between them seemed to thicken with unspoken possibility. That evening, Xavier insisted on escorting Penelope back to the trading post. Their conversation had flowed easily all afternoon, revealing shared values and complementary perspectives that surprised them both. "Thank you," Penelope said as they reached Martha's cabin. "I didn't realize how much I needed that." Xavier removed his hat, holding it before him. "There's a social at the Peterson farm next Saturday. Would you consider attending with me?" The invitation caught her off guard. "A social? With dancing and such?" He nodded, looking suddenly uncertain. "If you don't want to, no, I'd like that," she interrupted, feeling a blush warm her cheeks. "Very much." His smile came slowly, lighting his entire face. "I'll come by around 4 then." As he rode away, Penelope recognized the flutter in her stomach for what it was, the beginning of something she hadn't expected to find in her exile from Copper Creek. The social at the Peterson farm marked a turning point. Dressed in her best and only good dress, Penelope felt both nervous and excited as Xavier helped her into his freshly cleaned wagon. Martha had helped arrange her hair, weaving ribbons through the dark curls. "You look beautiful," Xavier said simply, his honest admiration evident in his eyes. The gathering was smaller than the town socials Penelope was accustomed to, but far warmer in spirit. The Peterson farm boasted a large barn cleared for dancing, with lanterns strung from the rafters and trestle tables laden with food brought by neighboring families. To her relief, the ranchers and their families welcomed her without reservation. Many had read her article and quietly expressed support for her courage. Several of the men had worked in the mines themselves before turning to ranching, and shared their own stories of Richardson's disregard for safety. When the fiddle music started, Xavier held out his hand. "May I have this dance, Miss Adams?" Dancing with Xavier felt as natural as their conversations. He led with confidence, but not domination, his hand warm and steady at her waist. As they twirled among the other couples, Penelope realized she was truly happy for the first time since leaving home. "Thank you for bringing me," she said as they paused for refreshment. Xavier handed her a cup of punch. "Selfishly done, I'm afraid. I've wanted to dance with you since the day we met." The admission sent a pleasant shiver through her. "You've thought about dancing with me all this time?" His gaze was steady. "I've thought about a great many things concerning you, Penelope Adams." Before she could respond, a commotion at the barn entrance drew their attention. Sheriff Dawson stood there, hat in hand, scanning the crowd until his eyes landed on Penelope. "Miss Adams," he called, making his way toward them. "Got news you'll want to hear." Xavier stepped protectively closer to her side as the sheriff approached. "There's been an accident at the mine," Dawson explained. "Collapse in the north tunnel. 8 men trapped." Penelope's hand flew to her mouth. "Was anyone hurt?" The sheriff nodded grimly. 3 injured when they tried to dig through. Richardson had ordered supports removed to save costs, just like you wrote. He cleared his throat. "Thing is, a state inspector arrived this morning. Seems your article made its way to Denver. Richardson's been arrested for criminal negligence." The news rippled through the gathering. Penelope stood frozen, processing the implications. "There's more," Dawson continued. "Your father led the rescue effort. Got all 8 men out alive." He offered a small smile. "He's been asking after you. Seems right proud of what you did." Tears welled in Penelope's eyes. "He wants to see me? Said to tell you the door's open whenever you're ready." After the sheriff departed, Penelope stood in stunned silence. Xavier guided her outside, where the evening air helped clear her thoughts. "I should go to them," she said finally. "My family." Xavier nodded, though she caught a flash of something like fear in his eyes. "Of course. I'll take you first thing tomorrow." She studied his face in the moonlight. "You think I won't come back?" He looked away. "Wouldn't blame you if you didn't. Family's important." Penelope reached for his hand. "So are you." The simple statement hung between them, full of meaning neither was quite ready to articulate. The following morning, Xavier drove Penelope to her family home in Copper Creek. The journey was quiet, both lost in their own thoughts about what this reconciliation might mean for their growing connection. When they arrived, Penelope was shocked to see her father waiting on the front porch. Thomas Adams looked older, his face lined with new creases of worry and regret. "Penny," he said hoarsely as she approached, using the childhood nickname he hadn't spoken in years. "Father." She stood before him, uncertain. Without warning, he pulled her into a fierce embrace. "I was wrong," he whispered against her hair. So terribly wrong. Can you ever forgive me? Inside, her mother's tearful welcome and her sister's excited chatter created a cacophony of emotion. Through it all, Penelope was acutely aware of Xavier standing quietly by the door, hat in hand, witnessing this family reunion with an inscrutable expression. Her father noticed him too. You the Caldwell boy who's been looking after my daughter? Xavier straightened. Yes, sir. My sister and I have been fortunate to have her help at our trading post. Thomas Adams extended his hand. Then I owe you my gratitude, Mr. Caldwell. The tension in the room eased slightly as the men shook hands. Soon, the family gathered around the kitchen table, catching up on the weeks of separation. Xavier remained politely distant, clearly feeling he was intruding on a private family moment. Will you be moving home now, dear? Her mother asked, hope evident in her voice. Penelope glanced at Xavier, whose expression remained carefully neutral despite the tightness around his eyes. I need time to think, she answered honestly. Later, as Xavier prepared to depart, Penelope walked him to his wagon. Your family needs you, he said quietly. They're good people who made a mistake. Don't hold it against them too long. What about what I need? She asked. His eyes met hers briefly before looking away. Just want you to be happy, Penelope. I'll come by tomorrow, she promised. We have more to discuss. That night, Penelope lay in her childhood bed, surrounded by familiar comforts, yet feeling strangely out of place. Her family's apologies were sincere, their love evident, but something had fundamentally changed. She had changed. The following day, true to her word, Penelope rode the family horse to the Caldwell ranch. She had asked directions in town, learning that Xavier's property lay beyond the trading post, nestled against the foothills. What she found surprised her: a modest but prosperous operation with a sturdy main house, barn, and bunkhouse. A few ranch hands tipped their hats as she approached. One directed her to a partially constructed building at the edge of the property. There she found Xavier, shirt sleeves rolled up, measuring boards for what appeared to be a small cabin. He looked up at the sound of her approach, his face registering surprise and something like hope. Didn't expect to see you so soon, he admitted, setting down his saw. Penelope dismounted, taking in the construction site. What are you building? A place of my own, he replied, wiping his hands on a rag. Been sharing the main house with my foreman's family since Martha took over our parents' house at the trading post. She walked the perimeter of the foundation. It's going to be lovely. The view of the mountains is spectacular. Xavier watched her, hesitation evident in his stance. How are things with your family? Better, she acknowledged. They've apologized. Father's been named temporary mine manager until the company sends someone new. He's implementing all the safety measures I wrote about. I'm glad to hear it. Penelope turned to face him directly. They want me to come home permanently. His expression tightened, though he tried to hide it. That makes sense. You belong with your family. Do I? She stepped closer. These past weeks have taught me that belonging isn't always about where you came from. Sometimes it's about where you choose to be. She took a deep breath. And who you choose to be with. Hope flickered in his eyes. What are you saying, Penelope? I'm saying that when my family shut their door against me, you offered me shelter. Not just physically, but here. She pressed a hand to her heart. You believed in me when no one else did. Xavier moved toward her, closing the distance between them. I still do. I've made my decision, she continued. I'll visit my family often, help mend those bridges. But my place isn't there anymore. Her eyes held his. If you'll have me, I'd like to stay. With you. For a moment, he simply stared at her, as if afraid to believe what he was hearing. Then, with gentle reverence, he cradled her face in his work-roughened hands. I started building this house the day after I met you, he confessed. Hoping that someday, maybe, you might consider it your home too. His kiss was tentative at first, as if giving her every chance to reconsider. But Penelope had never been more certain of anything. She returned his embrace with all the emotion that had been building between them. When they finally parted, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Penelope Adams. Have since that first night when you refused to accept defeat. And I love you, Xavier Caldwell, for seeing me as I truly am and valuing me for it. They married that autumn, in a ceremony that united not only two people but two families. Thomas Adams walked his daughter down the aisle with tears in his eyes, placing her hand in Xavier's with genuine blessing. Martha stood as Penelope's matron of honor, beaming with approval. The small cabin Xavier had been building became their first home, filled with books, carvings, and the wooden box that had been his first gift to her. On the wall hung a framed copy of the article that had changed both their lives. One evening, as they sat on their front porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Xavier handed Penelope a small package. "What's this for?" she asked, unwrapping it carefully. Inside lay a key attached to an intricately carved wooden tag. "For the door," he explained, gesturing to their home. "The one we built together. So you'll always have a place that's yours, no matter what." Penelope curled her fingers around the key, this symbol of everything they'd created. "Thank you for building me a door that will never close against me." "Never," Xavier promised, drawing her close. Some doors, once opened, are meant to stay that way forever. As stars appeared in the darkening sky, Penelope Adams Caldwell rested her head on her husband's shoulder, grateful for closed doors that had ultimately led her to the most welcoming one of all.